Gentlemen, and welcome to the opening ceremony for the IOSCO GYM Committee Conference of the International Organization of Securities Commissions, hosted by the Egyptian Financial Supervisory Authority. My name is Dr. Shahinaz Rashad, the Executive Director of FSI EFSA, and I have the honor to act as your Master of Ceremonies and provide remarks at this opening ceremony. IOSCO GYM Committee Conference this year is under the theme of accelerating growth and development of emerging capital markets. For those of you who may not know IOSCO already, IOSCO is the preeminent international organization for securities regulators and other bodies with an interest in securities regulation. IOSCO is a truly global organization with over 200 members from over 110 jurisdictions. Those members are from each continent, and they convey various cultural and historical backgrounds from all manners of economies, large and small, across the globe. IOSCO members are usually bound by a common purpose to act in the interest of sound and effective securities regulation, to protect investors, to reduce systemic risk, and to promote transparent and efficient capital markets. Outside IOSCO's direct membership, it is a particular pleasure for us to welcome you here today at the beginning of the public part of the GYM Committee Conference, the many members of the financial service industry, other local and international bodies, and others with an interest in securities regulation. This conference, along with IOSCO's other public events, provides a platform to share best practices and to provide networking opportunities. And I greatly invite you to take advantage of this opportunity. Also, I would like to thank the event sponsors for their support to such an important event. In order, I would like first to render special thank you for our main sponsors, the Egyptian Capital Market Association and MIS for Central Clearing and Depository and Registry, MCDR. Our trading sponsor, the Egyptian Stock Exchange, our Investor Protection Fund, who acts as investor protection sponsor, our cross-listing sponsor, EFG Hermes, our media sponsors, المال, Borsa, Amwal Al-Ghad, and CNBC Arabia. Ladies and gentlemen, now we are to start the formal part of this ceremony, and we are indeed honored with the presence of such distinguished speakers throughout the 3 sessions in this conference. And it is therefore my very great pleasure to introduce our first speaker, the Chairman of the Egyptian Financial Supervisory Authority, Mr. Sharif Sami, to provide his welcoming remarks. So please join us in welcoming Mr. Sharif to the platform. Thank you.
Good morning. Lots of friends, friendly faces and colleagues. I'll start by saying Minister of Investments, Ashraf Salman, was supposed to be here on behalf of the government, but we have a mission to Spain and Cyprus, and I think he's joining the President, so he apologizes for not being here. He sends his regards. We have a distinguished audience on all fronts. Mr. Rajit Singh, the Vice Chair of IOSCO, head of the Growth and Emerging Markets Committee, who was really the main theme here is growth and emerging markets. Mr. David Wright is the Secretary General of the IOSCO. We have also the Vice Chairs, Mr. Leonardo and Mr. Bert from South Africa, the Vice Chairs. And we have lots of heads and executives in 40 jurisdictions from the IOSCO. We're pleased to have experts that are speaking today in the various panels from as far as Hong Kong, Europe, North America. We've had the chance also on days 1 and 2 of our meetings to interact with experts, mainly on risk issues, on funds. Our problems are very similar. The challenges are common among emerging markets, which is good. You know, I feel I am not alone. Also, we're happy to have several of the previous leaders of EFSA, the former chairman, Dr. Ashraf Sharawi, Dr. Muhammad Maid, Dr. Adil Munir, the boards of the Stock Exchange and EFSA, and a number of players in the financial community in Egypt. Other than the EFSA members being here, they're used to what we discuss. We're happy that our local community, the financial services community, will get at least a chance for a day to interact, with players from actually 5 continents. Also see where we lag, so we need to accelerate. Where we are, we have a good competitive position. We're happy also to the chairman of the stock exchange, Dr. Omran, because we have a lot of ideas about debt markets, about ETFs, about derivatives. So the discussions, are really relevant for us. I'll say an Arabic word for the media, if you don't mind, before I finish. احنا كنا بنرحب بلجنة الاسواق الواعدة والناشئة لمنظمة الأيوسكو، وهي أكبر منظمة في العالم بتجمع كل رؤساء هيئات الاسواق المالية. التجمع ده فيه 100 ممثل من 40 دولة، بنناقش فيه قضايا مهمة جدا بتهمنا على مستوى مصر أو الأسواق الناشئة، وبنرى إنها فرصة حتى لتفاعل السوق المصري مع الأسواق الناشئة اللي بنقارن بيها. عندنا روسيا، عندنا الصين، عندنا الهند، جنوب أفريقيا، البرازيل، كثير من دول شرق ووسط أوروبا. وعندنا على مدى 3 جلسات بنناقش تنشيط أسواق السندات، أسواق المستقبلية بيسموها المشتقات، إضافة إلى كيفية تفعيل ما يعرف بصناديق المؤشرات. نرحب بحضراتكم ونتمنى لكم مشاركة طيبة. And now I'm back to introduce Mr. Arjit Singh, the chair of the Growth and Emerging Markets Committee. Thank you very much.
I hope I don't trip off any of these microphones. It's like a booby trap here. His Excellency, Mr. Sharif Sami, Chairman of the Egyptian Financial Supervisory Authority, IOSCO colleagues, distinguished guests, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to all of you. I must say it is such a pleasure to be back here in Cairo. Actually, it's about nearly 10 years since I was last here, Sharif, and I'm continue to be amazed as the very strong progress that's made here, but particularly the very warm hospitality that we experience here when we come. But the Egyptian Financial Supervisory Authority is also a very active member of the Growth and Emerging Markets Committee, and we appreciate very much that they have kindly hosted this meeting of the Growth and Emerging Markets Committee and the annual conference for 2015 this year. I'd like, first of all, to extend, on behalf of my committee, our extreme appreciation and commendation to Chairman Sami, you and your team at the Egyptian Financial Supervisory Authority for the excellent organization and warm hospitality that has been extended to us. Please extend them a very warm gratitude. Thank you. I'd like also, I appreciate very much also the very strong participation that we have at this meeting of the Growth and Emerging Markets Committee. I'm also extremely grateful to the many speakers who have come to speak at this conference. As Chairman Sami was alluding, we have an outstanding caliber of speakers here, many of them very close friends, and I appreciate the fact that they've been able to make time to be here in Cairo and share with you their insights on very topical issues that are affecting emerging markets. As I said, it is really a pleasure for us to have this conference take place in Cairo, a city steep in history and culture and home, of course, to the Great Pyramids. Egypt's strategic location linking Africa to Asia through the Suez Canal makes it an accessible gateway to global markets. As home to one of the oldest capital markets in the region, dating back to to the 19th century, when the Alexandria Exchange was established in 1883, it is clear that the role of market-based financing that today is very dominant in the discussions that take place at the global financial level was something that Egypt recognized very early on. Today's conference, ladies and gentlemen, is taking place during a time of increasingly challenging external landscape for emerging markets. Uncertainties surrounding the global economy is impacting overall sentiment and confidence. In an environment that has become much more interconnected and interdependent, volatile conditions in commodity and financial markets, uncertainties in the timing and extent of highly accommodative monetary policies, and the implications of divergent monetary policy stance pursued in the major economies are having significant implications for many emerging markets around the world. And this, of course, includes the risk of capital flow volatility as well as spillovers from disruptions from other parts of the world. While the growth performance in many emerging markets is expected to moderate, collectively emerging markets continue to be an important driver of global economic growth. Recognizing the importance of emerging markets within the context of the global financial landscape, just last month, the Financial Stability Board held a closed-door forum among senior officials, Ministry of Finance officials, central bankers, and capital market regulators to discuss key issues of importance to emerging markets that have global financial stability ramifications. As chair of IOSCO's Growth in Emerging Markets Committee, which is the largest committee in IOSCO, as Dr. Shahnaz was outlining, this is a very large organization of securities regulators, and 75% of the membership of IOSCO comprises growth in emerging markets. We have been able to play a very important role in contributing to discussions around issues affecting emerging markets, both within IOSCO as well as the wider Financial Stability Board and other international fora. This is an area that the conference will discuss this morning. Yesterday, we had a very good meeting of the Growth in Emerging Markets Committee. It was, of course, a meeting that was a closed-door meeting with its members, and we had extensive discussions around some of the key risks that the emerging markets are facing, and some very important discussion points around the significance of building deeper and more resilient markets to be able to ensure that we have the appropriate buffers against the externalities that continue to impact financial markets. Ladies and gentlemen, the remit of emerging market regulators is essentially twofold. It is to make markets safe and, importantly, to ensure that markets work for the broader economy. In doing so, regulators must ensure that the role of the capital market is strengthened to support equitable and sustainable growth for the economy and increase access to financing and investment opportunities, a very important point that I note is also being pursued in Egypt by the Financial Supervisory Authority. For many markets, access to long-term financing is absolutely critical, particularly for sectors which play a catalytic role in economic development, including infrastructure as well as SME financing. Emerging markets, in particular, have significant financing needs, with demand for infrastructure estimated to equal 1 trillion ringgit per year, $1 trillion US dollars, per year until 2030. I'm so used to addressing Malaysian audience and sometimes forget the currency of denomination. My apologies. As I said, I note that this infrastructure demands, which is significant within the emerging markets context, is also equally applicable in the context of Egypt. And we note that you have several landmark projects that have been announced over the last few months, including the Egyptian government's plan to build a new capital to the east of Cairo, and reflecting the increasing infrastructure needs of Egypt. which could act as a catalyst for greater investments and for more business opportunities. And this is where market-based financing can play a critical role in bridging the financing gaps of SMEs, particularly as banks are forced to deleverage to meet the more stringent prudential requirements under Basel III. Through avenues and instruments such as the equity market, corporate bond market, and of course in many emerging jurisdictions, the Islamic capital market, particularly the sukuk market and the securitization markets, the capital markets overall provide the financing solutions that many SMEs face. In this regard, I'm pleased to share with you that the GEM committee yesterday approved the publication of a report on SME financing through capital markets at our plenary meeting, a work which is very important, led by Vice Chair of the GEM committee, Bert Shalitzia, it's a piece of work that follows on from a very important work that we had done last year on long-term financing that we presented to the G20. And this particular report looks at how SME financing requirements and what are the key challenges that SMEs face in accessing market-based financing. And I know this morning in the conversations that I've had with some of the members of the Egyptian financial services industry, this is an important aspect of interest, Sharif, here as well. Ladies and gentlemen, in the face of heightened uncertainty, volatile financial markets, building resilience is one of the best lines of defense to deal with spillovers from external developments on future shocks. At IOSCO, emerging risks and potential vulnerabilities are at the forefront of our deliberations. We recognize that effective monitoring and supervision are absolutely critical to provide early warning signals of potential market stress. Supervisory safeguards, such as microprudential requirements on intermediaries and market infrastructure operators, are paramount to ensure these entities remain well capitalized. Further, the adequacy of these safeguards needs to be routinely stress tested against a range of adverse scenarios, including tail risk events. As part of our efforts at the Growth and Emerging Markets Committee to strengthen regulatory capacity to manage risks, the committee, in collaboration with the Toronto Centre, held a simulated crisis preparedness and contingency planning workshop here in Cairo. And this is done for the first time ever. And I'm pleased to share with you that this particular workshop was an absolute success. And I'm very grateful to Andrea, who is here from the Toronto Centre, to have provided the resources to do this. But clearly, in my discussions and feedback with many emerging market regulators, they continue to highlight to me that it is important that in this environment of extreme volatility and stress that markets face, the preparedness of capital market regulators to be able to withstand these shocks and to be able to have the right toolkit to respond in a crisis environment is imperative. And this is the work that the Growth and Emerging Markets Committee will pursue with experts like the Toronto Centre. We also, as I said, had a very active roundtable with leading global industry players, and some of them are here this morning to continue in the discussions on the panel. We are very excited about being here in Cairo, very excited by what the conference today has in store. Let me make a little bit of a plug to another conference that's coming up in a few months' time. We have our annual conference, which will be held in London in June. And may I urge, obviously the members of the GEM committee should all be there. As I say, inshallah, we want to be able to be present at that particular meeting. By the same time, let me also extend an invitation to the Egyptian financial services industry to also attend the IOSCO annual conference. It will afford a very significant opportunity to be able to see some of the developments that are affecting both the financial regulatory environment as well as market development, including in the area of technology. Let me conclude by saying that volatility is a given in today's challenging environment. Noise, and uncertainty have become standard fixtures of the global marketplace. It is therefore critical for emerging markets to focus on forging new and sustainable areas of growth while addressing areas of vulnerability. Today's conference will examine ways to lend greater vibrancy and depth to the capital market in offering a compelling value proposition for a wide spectrum of investors, issuers, and intermediaries. I hope you enjoy the conference. Shukran.
Okay, and now we move to our first session and panel discussion under the title of Harnessing the Development of Derivatives Market. This session shall be moderated by Bert Shanetsa, Deputy Executive Officer, Financial Services Board, South Africa. Please, if we could let the panel members, just the panelists, you could join the table, please.
New rules for certain products or certain agents, specialized agents. Market regulators concerned with systemic risk and stability, which is new in a certain way. Gains of importance for the so-called market infrastructures. All these initiatives are linked to the need to deal with the dangers brought by the sometimes excessive creative of market agents. In emerging markets, situation is a little bit different. A good number of countries does not have to need with the excesses of the innovative processes, at least not at this moment. They have to think also at the same time in how to stimulate their financing mechanisms, especially for huge infrastructure projects. This is the importance of derivatives for emerging markets. The development of a market of derivatives is part nowadays of the development of a financial system in a broader sense. Derivatives are important to hedge against some economic risks, but at the same time they facilitate the access to financial resources. And even having this clear advantages, they brought some new risks to the market, and these new risks are not always easily understood. And more than that, there are different kinds of risks with which we have to deal. Nowadays, we speak a lot about risks to the stability, and we have to think about those risks. But in emerging markets, there are another level of risk that I think should be taken into consideration. It's what I could call a risk derived from some cultural and structural factors. As we saw in Brazil in 2008, sometimes in non-financial companies, derivatives begin to be used as an instrument of hedge. But within time, they start to become speculative mechanisms. And sometimes you do not have adequate governance rules, internal controls, and transparency procedures adequate to this new reality. Then, the development of markets of derivatives markets is essential for emerging markets, but it has to be part of broader processes that involves an adequate regulation in a modern governance environment.
Thank you. Thank you, Otavio. So you've heard the perspectives of our panelists, each from their different undertakings, and I think that is actually a good platform from which to begin our sort of more detailed examination of the issues. So I turn first of all to Sunil. The Pittsburgh Declaration has had countries around the world issuing regulations for OTC derivatives. This has resulted in overlapping regulation and concerns about extraterritoriality. Is this being addressed adequately or satisfactorily?
Thank you.
You heard Andre laugh. I'm sure she has some views on that. Okay.
Let me start with the premise of the G20 commitments. As I said before, I think given that the discipline of mark-to-market, the discipline of margining really helped exchange-traded markets fare well during the crisis, I think naturally the logical conclusion was, why don't we get as many of these standardized OTC derivatives on exchanges or cleared where appropriate. And I think it's a laudable goal, but there are two things that will happen, and it's, with a commitment. One is, we all know that policy will not be adopted by different countries at the same pace. The US actually has been faster than many other countries in adopting the G20 reforms. It's not completely done, but to a great extent it has adopted that. The second problem is that there are jurisdictional differences, the legal structure differences, market structure differences in different jurisdictions, and it's very difficult to have a granular set of rules that apply uniformly to all countries. So I think the IOSCO effort and the CPMI IOSCO effort for PFMI standards, principles in financial market, for financial market institutions, was a laudable effort because it set a baseline. These are basic principles that are important for financial market infrastructures as we transition more of these OTC products onto exchanges or clearinghouses. Bear in mind that these principles actually were practiced by a lot of markets already, mature markets, and this was also an exercise to actually agree, let's adopt these principles. Now the problem is that the intent was that each jurisdiction would, with its own set of rules, from an outcomes perspective, adopt these principles and then be considered equivalent. That has not panned out. In fact, ironically, the world for recognition of different jurisdictions as they adopt reforms was better before the crisis than after the crisis. So prior to the crisis, a lot of US financial market institutions, US exchanges were recognized in Europe by different countries, by England, UK, by Germany, by France, different countries. But now that recognition is uncertain. There is still a discussion, and there are different jurisdictions trying to go over from a line item by line item basis. There definitely will be differences. That was the goal of PFMIs. So when you bring up this topic of extraterritoriality, very difficult for me to pronounce that. English is my second language, and recognition. We have to go back to principles. We have to go back to PFMI. Why is that important for emerging market countries? If you can, as Scott so eloquently pointed out, these markets need to be accessible. So you need to have global participation because there is a lot of investment coming in from other countries. And there are a number of these countries. I think we mentioned 40 plus countries as a part of the IOSCO. So when you talk about such diverse jurisdictions with such large numbers, the best way and the most important thing for markets in all of these countries, for them to thrive and for them to be accessible, is to go back to recognition of each other's markets based on principles, as long as they adopt these principles in the interest of market stability. So I think those are the challenges I see. These growth in emerging markets and IOSCO can easily overcome these challenges. You can learn from what is happening in the developed world. We can avoid the urge to go on a line item by line item basis and compare jurisdictions and go to principles. That's the best outcome for market participants as well as for markets.
Okay. Well, it's interesting to hear you say that, and I think I heard you correctly when you say that arrangements for equivalence perhaps worked better amongst some of the jurisdictions before all the sort of this flurry of rules came about.
Exactly.
Okay. Now, just to sort of shift the focus to GEM countries now, do you feel that